And some of them are quite bawdy. That one was very tame.
They're more than bawdy.
Yes, they are more.
Let's read at your own respect.
Read at your own mistake.
Good job.
We have a special guest speaker tonight. Alida, one of the owners of the New Europa, has graciously said she will present tonight. The stage is yours. Alida.
Jim is a really tough act to follow, and I'll do the best I can. The reason I'm presenting today is because I promised Angelica that there's a poem that she had written, and mine was written a few years before that, and it was so much like the one she wrote, at least the sentiment. It was a girlfriend of hers who passed away, and she was bringing her up to date with what's been happening on this planet. And mine is a little sad, but it's has the same sentiment. It's called You Are Still Here. Melissa dear, since you've been gone, it's been a year. But for me, you're always near. Comes each morn, and with it the New York Times, your daily favorite as well as mine. I start to read it and my spirits soar. You are with me every day once more. I read, then stop to recall all our discourses on war and peace and political forces, our enthusiasm in the election of '92, our despair at the rumblings of war in 2002, and how we cringed on learning of the president's affair, that's Clinton, and then his initial laissez-faire. I think of all that's happening today and think of you and all the analyses and agonizing we could do. I especially missed you through the most of 2008. I missed you, my partner in political debate. Did you know that the one you and I first heard of in 2004, he's now the president, called Barack. But from where you are, there's not much you don't see or know. I watched the Antiques Roadshow and you are with me again, jogging memory of your expertise on objects arcane. Many hours did we spend reviewing objects d'art. I recall all those things that were so dear to your heart. Good books, good art, good food and wine, your choices always bordering on the sublime. Through the UN's corridors, you were respected and loved, soft of voice, lilting laughter, and your touch, velvet glove. Of beauty, style, and wit you were a paragon, from God's very special designs were you drawn. With gift to everyone's better angels to appeal, angel yourself, your aura too bright to conceal. Heaven now may well guard you in a watchful embrace, but I still have you here in my heart, in my secret place. This was written in 2009. Have time a little bit? All right. A few weeks ago or months ago, I read a little bit about a book that I was writing at the behest of Mr. Michael Ray King, who's been like nagging me for 2 years. And I write a little bit each time and then I get lazy again. But this is a little vignette from my childhood where we lived in practically a jungle, so in India. This is about my two brothers, Ambrose and Dan, and the youth, we call them Ambi and Danny, lose themselves among the sand dunes. My two brothers were handling Daisy and Diana air guns ever since they were in diapers, and that's the truth. Of course, my dad had drilled them into them the basic rules of gun handling, i.e. never point a gun, loaded or not, at anybody, never treat any gun as a toy, and to always squeeze the trigger gently and firmly with no jerky motions. At the time of this particular incident, we lived adjacent to an area that was practically an extension of the run of Kutch. It's like a vast desert, where vast expanses of dunes and scrubland were the norm, speckled with flora and fauna typical to that sort of topography. Wolves, foxes, and desert hares were quite prevalent, as were partridges, quails, and such kind of game birds. On the opposite side, there was an area with some rocky overhangs, then a vast expanse of salt flats, which finally ended in a dip towards the Arabian Sea. The brothers' ages probably ranged between 5 to 7 years, and since they were homeschooled at the time, there were many occasions when they would wander off after their morning chores and studies and be back by lunchtime. Their usual MO was to do some target practice by the dunes, shoot at some local birds and sparrows, and believe it or not, quite often they would bring home a few pigeons and even a quail or two. And again, believe it or not, as if to supplement their diet, for which there was no need at all, they would clean, cut, and try, and sometimes manage to cook the game over an open fire in the yard. More often than not, their prize was taken away from them and cooked in the family kitchen, and I must say that we all enjoyed the additional repast. On this particular day, I am not sure whether they wandered off in the direction of the dunes, the vast dunes, or towards the salt flats, or tried to cover both areas. In any case, long past lunchtime and way after dinner time, when the sun had set, there was still no sign of the young boys. There being few street lights to speak of near our house, and none of course by the dunes or by the salt flats, the boys seemed to have disappeared into the night. I can't recall whether it was a clear night or whether there was a sizable moon out or not, but I distinctly remember that in the house there was total pandemonium. The servants were getting yelled at. My sister and I could do nothing but look on teary-eyed in between some feeble attempts at suggestions as to where the boys might be. Dad was pulling together a posse to go look for them. Mom was trying to get through to the village chaudhry or chieftain to help, and also frantically trying to get the rickety rotary phone to get through to the police chief for his help. Sadly, the police at that time are never there when they're needed. In any case, these particular ones were based quite far away in a civilized part of the area, and I wondered what assistance they could render other than give my mother some solace in the fact that she had now put officials on the lookout for her sons. The posse sent by Dad returned empty-handed after searching the dunes and was about to depart towards the crags and the salt flats when in came the errant boys with a strut and a large load of game birds over their shoulders, looking as hungry and scruffy as old tramps that had been on the road for a month or so. Both my parents rushed towards them, and I was sure that they would get a proper boxing of the ears from Dad, and at the very least a tongue lashing from Mom. Instead, imagine my surprise when they received very relieved hugs and kisses from both my parents, who cast nary a glance at the bounty that the boys had brought in, nor a word about their irresponsible behavior. That would come later, but for now everyone let out a huge sigh of relief, while Faizu the cook quietly gathered up the birds which he would cook for lunch the next day. Much later on in life, we marveled at how brave yet foolish the young boys had been. Their chances of being kidnapped may have been slim, but nevertheless ever present, and but an attack by any one or more of the canine denizens of the dunes was a distinct possibility. But so ended a day in the desert for us.